right? He is the Phantom Menace, right? So how could it not be?
Well, I mean, but by that rationale, then that would make the movie a failure if the protagonist of the movie is only in the movie for 10 minutes of the movie.
Well, I mean,
That's a little bit of a flaw.
I hadn't even thought about, I didn't think of the movie, I thought it was like an ensemble thing, like The Hobbit or something.
I mean, Anakin really is the main character.
Anakin is, but he doesn't show up for 40 minutes into it.
Oh, yeah.
It really has
I mean,
nothing to do with
yeah.
trade federation, taxation,
No, that was
or
just, yeah.
whatever.
I thought Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan? I would lean toward Obi-Wan.
If I was going to think anybody, it was going to be,
Jar Jar.
Qui-Gon I thought was, the big deal. Not only is he Qui-Gon, he's, what's the guy's name? What's that?
Liam?
Liam Neeson?
Liam Neeson, for God's sake. The man has that structural thing
He has
going
a
on.
very
Yes,
particular
gravitas.
set of skills.
Yeah, so character is another point that's leveled against it. Like when I walked out of the movie, my big thing was, I think this is where it wasn't confusion, but my disappointment. I was like, where's my Han Solo in this movie? They all seemed like boring Obi-Wan / Luke characters. And I wanted, except for Jar Jar.
You almost had that
Yeah,
guy.
was Jar Jar my Han Solo?
You almost kind of had that Tanaka guy. Was that his name? Padme's
Banaka.
Banaka?
well, that's the argument that never comes up against the prequels, which I couldn't argue, which is I do think that it missed the formula of the Leia, Luke, Han. So,
Yeah.
and that's never, and that was the argument, to be like, okay, you've got a valid argument, but that it never comes up. It's just always.
It was just more, it was kind of like when I saw Man of Steel. I don't want to cause another fight. It was kind of like, where's the fun here? These movies used to be so much fun. I'd laugh. And the big laughs, to me, fell flat a little bit, probably because most of the humor was put into Jar Jar. And I think when Firefly came out not too long later, that's why people ran to it. Because they were like, here's my Han Solo! And Han Solo's back. And that whole show was populated by Han Solo's back.
When I found it so far.
Anyway, that's my Han Solo point. So, yeah,
Are we taking questions?
sure. It's a free-for-all.
Doesn't it seem that with the first actual 3 movies, it was a combination of Luke and Leia and Han and that. But when we started over, it really became the central character was Anakin Skywalker, and how he became Darth Vader. So what that made him, his character, the arc of the first 6 movies. It's kind of the only really bright spot in that was Obi-Wan Kenobi. Otherwise, it stopped. I remember reading that they thought the movies would be about C-3PO and R2-D2. But by bringing in Darth Vader, they made it a Darth Vader story.
That's the thing. George Lucas said there's never going to be a 7, 8, and 9 because this is the story of Anakin Skywalker from being a kid to death. So you're right, told through the eyes of droids.
So here's let's get to plot a little bit, because the plot did confuse me. Excuse me. I'll come back to it. Is this about this?
It was going back to your main character point.
Oh, go to the main character point, because I would like an answer.
I think you should consider Padme. Because if you think about it, that first film
That's
is
a good
her.
point.
It's centered to become the Trade Federation. She is the queen. She's handling it.
No, I love
It's her
that
plot,
answer.
Tatooine, she comes back, and then she kicks a bunch of butt and takes her planet back.
No, that's a really good point. It's really awesome.
It's awesome.
Yeah, that'll be my new answer. I like that. That's good. Back to the plot. Okay, so here's one of the things. So George, his defense after everybody came and yelled at him for the movie, his defense was always, these are movies for kids, right? So what kids, does any kids in this audience that you know, how are they into like taxation and trade and cargoes? I mean,
That's fair because we're not up here defending Return of the Jedi because we all watched it when we were kids, right?
No, I mean, I did.
Yeah, so did I.
As a kid, I probably would just glazed over at the idea of taxation.
No, you're right. I mean, it was just like the opening crawl of Phantom Menace is like a dissertation or something.
Yeah, and then, I mean, even in the third act, it goes to like the vote of no confidence.
Yeah.
That was our secret plan.
So I had this really telling experience that one makes me defend Jar Jar of all
Okay.
things, in that they released the Phantom Menace in 3D on the big screen before we knew that we were going to get any more Star Wars. And I was like, crap, I pulled my son out of school because it's still Star Wars. I was like, you're gonna watch Star Wars on the big screen where it belongs. And I'm sure the 3D was actually really good. I like the pod race in 3D, it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're gonna go do this. And I never had a more telling experience as to what is wrong with episode 1. And I don't want to spend all my time saying what's wrong, there's lots that's right, but until I sat there with an 8-year-old trying to watch it. And this is what I realized while sitting with an 8-year-old. You have the action scene at the beginning, and then they kind of leave, and then there's no action except for like a 30-second sword fight between Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon and Darth Maul. There's no action in the movie for an hour. And my son started squirming and looking, and then you get to the final battle on Naboo, and he's back into the
Well, I
film.
thought there was action. I mean,
Well, there's the Jar Jar underwater
Yeah, the
stuff.
Jar Jar underwater.
No, I mean,
Action.
once they leave Naboo, to once they get back to Naboo, everything on Coruscant and everything on Tatooine.
A guy right
except
there
for
with the
Pirates.
Star Wars shirt.
You know what movie is exactly like that? A New Hope. When my 7-year-old, it's the same experience. The first hour of New Hope, after the very beginning of it, is really dry. I mean, it's really dry. They don't
Walking
get, they
through
don't
the
get
desert.
to, they
Yeah,
don't get to
they're
Mos
not-
Eisley until like
yeah, they're-
45 minutes or
Yeah,
so.
they're not really action movies. You know?
I know.
Yeah.
And the revelation also with A New Hope is, its plot is sort of convoluted too. It's like, we're taking the plants to Alderaan, and then Alderaan blows up, and then we save a princess, and then we take the plants somewhere else, and then we do it's not as clear A to B as you remember. You know,
Well,
it seems
it's,
like
it's more structured like a serial.
a serial,
Yeah,
and I think Phantom Menace tried to do the same.
I don't know. So when you go see the movie, it's like I imagine he has to keep in mind that kids are going to see it as well as adults. What's going to keep both people there at the same time? I mean, when I saw it, I'm one of those people. I suspend my disbelief almost 2 seconds after I said, well, I promise. I want to hear what you say. It's like, for me, the action took place as action also with the special effects, but the underwater stuff, with the visuals. I mean, you get to see places you've never seen before. You get to hear languages you've never heard before. I mean, that's the thing that is so cool about Lucas, when he gets his Doug Chain guy designing these conceptual art for all that stuff, and he puts all that stuff up there. I think at some point we become a little bit jaded about what it is we see. I remember when episode 1 came out, it came out more or less around the same time as The Matrix. And everybody more or less was trying to compare it to The Matrix. And I'm like, you can't do that. It's an unfair thing. The Matrix is The Matrix and Star Wars is Star Wars. And we, again, I have way too much knowledge about how things are done. So when we do see a fantastic set like Naboo, when they first come to the planet of Naboo, you're supposed to go, wow, that's awesome. You're not supposed to go, and it looks so fake. Oh, I don't know. The waterfall. I don't know if you're supposed to hear that sound on the waterfall. The birds. I don't know about the birds. Oh, then it's like people are really forgetting. You're supposed to go into it and go, wow, this guy's really thought about the physics of this universe.
But I don't think anybody's doubting that the episode 1 effects were amazing. I mean, I think it's a good looking film. When you spend that crazy amount of money, you have the premier effects house in the world. Basically you own it. So
Yeah, I do think, and I will get here. Yeah, I do think with the effects, to me, Jurassic Park was the last time I was like, oh my god, that's awesome. That movie.
Prometheus for me.
Prometheus. All right, that we could do that panel. Yeah, but Jurassic Park was one, and then The Matrix did different stuff with it. So it had this visual style that I hadn't seen,
Yeah,
and
it was
the kung fu stuff.
fresher.
And in that I want to defend episode 1,
Yeah.
because that's what we're supposed to be doing, is compared to the other prequels and even the original trilogy, episode 1 used sets. It used locations.
Yeah, excellent.
They built stuff. And there's still a tactile feel to where you were in episode 1. When you get to episode 2, it becomes much clearer that they are in digitally created.
There was probably more on-location filming in Phantom Menace than any other Star Wars movie.
Yeah,
Maybe it might compete against Return of the Jedi. But, and that's always the thing, it's like, yeah, it's all blue screen, green screen, that's what I hate these movies, and it's just like,
it's like George Lucas is the guy who more or less came up with the idea of doing the green screen stuff. Anyway, you got, what was it, Radioland Murders or something like that, where they started to really utilize all of that really cool. And I get irritated with, obviously, but I get irritated with the concept that the guy who comes up with this new painterly style, if you want to call it that, he's going to get also crashed because of it as well. He really did start that stuff, and I don't see why he should not be able to continue to use that stuff. So when there are some points where you go, I don't think these people are really in peril or are in danger of losing their life, like in Clones where, Obi-Wan is holding on to whoever it is holding on to the little ship where you kind of feel like, yes, if he drops off of that, he's going to bounce off the floor. But again, if you don't lose yourself in the nitpicky aspect of a special effect, you might enjoy it.
I think it's valid.
I was just going to say, I saw what he said, my son could not make it through the original Star Wars. He tried, and just anytime there wasn't explosions or laser, blasts or whatever, he just...
I think that's a thing that maybe, we've seen that kids actually like those three better sometimes, very often. And they even like Crystal Skull better.
And maybe that's the problem with our generation. Like, it wasn't our, what they gave us was not our Star Wars. So I like Phantom Menace. I have a lot of misgivings about Phantom Menace. But if you were to ask my son, the original trilogy, none of them are his favorite. Yeah. He likes Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones, and then he goes, his is the opposite of mine. Then he goes to Jedi. Yeah. And it's that's just what he, and then Clone Wars and Rebels are actually his absolute favorite. So
the prequel trilogy, that would have been my Star Wars, and then reverse date myself a bit. I was 9 when Phantom Menace came out. Perfect. I mean, that was, you bet I love that movie. My little
Did
cousin,
you trade taxation issues and stuff like that yourself?
I mean, I was a nerdy child. I watched Wesley at age 10, so fair enough. Yeah. But I loved the original trilogy when I was a little kid. I think Phantom Menace became my favorite for a while, and then Attack of the Clones was my favorite, and then I saw my way through Revenge of the Sith at 15. Now I rank them 4, 5, 3, 6.
What order did you see them in?
4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3.
Oh, okay, you did.
Oh, I saw them when I was 2. Are you kidding me? I grew up on this. But when you look at my little cousin.
Good parenting.
My little cousin was 5 when she saw Phantom Menace for the first time. And for ages, she told me and everyone, her best friends were Darth Vader and Darth Maul. 5-year-old child, mind you. She loved Phantom Menace.
She's in jail now.
Wearing goth makeup.
I'll have to check. She's only 10, but
she's wearing goth makeup.
She may be. She looks like she was a dead ringer for Jake Lloyd as a child. I hope she never hears this.
It's going up on YouTube.
There's worse things to do on YouTube. But I was just saying, I think it really depends. A lot of people came into those movies having those very jaded adult opinions. It wasn't what they expected, and it wasn't what they thought they were getting. Whereas kids, we loved it. It was great.
When I saw Phantom Menace, unfortunately, I have this brain where it's like, I know how people are going to act when they see this. I know how they're going to act when they see this. And when Revenge of the Sniff, when that came out, I was like, I know how people are going to act about this. They're going to go, I know, and it just really irritates me. So one of the things, I love the movies, but also when I'm holding on to it, I'm like, you sons of bitches, come on now. It's just a movie, come on.
So I was single boat. I was 11 when it came out, and I remember going to the theater to see it, and I just wasn't impressed. I'd seen 4, 5, and 6 already. I wasn't impressed. It didn't feel like a Star Wars movie. And that was my issue with it. It just didn't feel like the universe that had been created. So I don't think I'm defending this as a movie. It's a fun movie to see. It's a lot of things. It's a good thing, but it just doesn't feel like Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think you all rated the lowest of all the lower two of the Star Wars movies.
It's comical. One of the things that I heard, the reason why they didn't enjoy episode 1 so much is because, one, they didn't feel like they could be a Jedi themselves. It's like, God, I have to have chloride, what?
We'll get to that,
And then people were pissed off by the fact that, well, the Jedi don't seem to be as wise as they're supposed to be.
Yeah, it's.
And I'm like, well, they have to fail because Darth Vader becomes Darth
I
Vader.
think though that goes to the hero's journey aspect of it, and the whole, it's
but
like
it's-
the ordinary kid that becomes something, where he doesn't seem ordinary from the beginning, and we already know he's Darth Vader.
But it's really a tough thing to, like, you know, and you know about it, Jamie, because you're a screenwriter, but like the idea of like already knowing the end of the story and having to build your way in there. And I think that, you know, if you look at it, like episodes 1 and 2 were just basically setups for Revenge of the Sith, and Revenge of the Sith is the best film of the second trilogy because he knew what Revenge of the Sith was going to be. I mean, you know what's going to happen, and he just kind of backlogged himself kind of into a corner, I think. And yeah, I mean, it didn't, and you know, it just didn't lead to much, you know, like really interesting plot points with the taxation and stuff like that.
You know, some of the good things. I mean, Darth Maul. How does he compare to the other villains? Let's start with Boba Fett. What do you think? Where would you rank
Darth
him?
Maul is probably the best villain in all of Star Wars. And I think that they were smart going in because I think they, you know, again, the Boba Fett thing, right? I think the less is more. So I think they were just, and I think that's why Darth Maul's got such a cult following and so much longevity is because, you know, it was less is more, and he was great. I mean, he hardly talked like Boba Fett, and just great. So that's, I think, it's true.
Yeah,
I mean, of all 6 movies, I think he probably is one of the best villains.
Yeah, like remember the point in the trailer where he lit.
Oh, good God, yeah.
That was like, you know, it gave me chills. You know, that was a good image. But yeah, he was great in that fight at the end. I mean, George knows how to do fights and battles. You know, there's no doubt.
Oh yeah, absolutely, probably the best lightsaber duel in all of Star Wars, and there's just a lot to say really good about him.
Although I wish they hadn't shown it in the trailer, because my buddy Arthur said this to me once. He said, how awesome would it have been in the theater for the first time when the movie's playing to see that second blade pop out, and then, but like by the time you get there, the surprise is gone, and that might have that was the thing that I kind of wish they hadn't done.
The music in that movie just killed it too, especially during that red lightsaber. I mean, the music.
Duel of Fates.
Yeah, John Williams always
One of the
comes
best.
there.
Right, because there's a lot of good in that.
You can go.
To your point, Justin, I think, I think it was awesome to see the double blade lightsaber in the trailer, but I think a lot of impact was lost by putting that in the trailer as opposed to like seeing it on the big screen and not knowing it was coming. And even like Josh Whedon, you know, who a lot of people like, myself including, is guilty of that. When one of the Avengers trailers came out, he kind of ruined the big Hulk saving Iron Man moment when he was falling down. So I wish even some of the best.
I'd say George has a lot more control.
But George definitely has final cut in that trailer. I don't think Josh Whedon has final.
Do you feel like that now? Do you feel like do you regret seeing the Side Blade trailer in Episode 7? Side Blade?
I haven't seen the trailer for episode 7.
Okay, well I just ruined it.
I figured that would come at some point.
It's all Jar Jar. It's weird. Everybody's there.
Wait, has anybody else not seen the trailer for episode? No.
Second one, fantastic. That first one I thought was a parody.
Just as a little disclaimer, I'm really like old school with my movie trailers. Like if it's a movie I'm really excited about, I want to see it on the big screen and then watch it a million times on my phone. If it's something I don't care about, I'll watch it on the internet or whatever.
I agree with that, but I think like what is sanctioned, like what they say, okay, you know, I don't want the spoilers, but if it's sanctioned, it comes from the studio, it comes from Lucasfilm, and it's like, okay, cool, and that's all part of the experience, right? Like, Star Wars is probably like, maybe like, to me, like 70-30 between like content and movies and fandom, so it's just kind of like part of like the excitement of building up to this movie. I mean,
Because if you don't see a lightsaber, you're like, well, what is
You're also.
They kind of had to give that to you. Just to,
I might be jaded though, because I just spent 12 hours sleeping on a concrete floor to watch J.J. Abrams show us the episode 7 trailer in Anaheim.
You're perfect. Go ahead.
I would actually agree with you guys in that Darth Maul had a huge amount of potential, and in fact, that's one of the biggest gripes I have about
Yeah.
the prequel is.
It's similar to how Boba Fett, people feel about Boba Fett
Well, I
sometimes.
mean, you have Palpatine in the back pulling the strings, and that's great. But, you know, it would have been great to have the same front man fighting the Jedi all the way through the arc instead of having the Sith apprentice of the week.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there was different disappointment is how Darth Maul got killed too. You know, it's like it was.
Watch Clone Wars.
Yeah, I know.
What are you talking
The bomb.
Your base knocked me
When I first saw Phantom Menace, I waited in line for 3 hours, got the tickets, the whole shebang, went and saw it, and I'm actually on TV saying how great this movie is. And then, the next day and a few days later, when actually a few weeks later, I saw it again, then is when I started picking it apart, you know? All the little things that drive me crazy, like the Trade Federation thing, I was like, why? But I do believe it was a Padme movie. She was right about that because the other characters I didn't care so much, but Padme I really was like in there, you know?
She was the most down to earth out. I mean, the most. Yeah, she was the most
She
down to earth.
cleaned R2-D2's grease off. Remember? Do you remember that scene where they said,
Oh yeah.
"Hey, go clean the robot off"?
But that being said, the Revenge of the Sith, I mean, in a way, Phantom Menace was like definitely a kid's movie, but the lead up to Revenge of the Sith actually made everything good.
You made
You know,
everything
once
what?
you get to Revenge
Dark.
of the Sith, it's darkness all the time. So you got that
Which again,
fun,
it's like it was a.
fun movie, and then you get to Revenge of the Sith.
But it was like it was trying to do this balancing act. Everybody was like, "Oh, these are kid pictures. When is Darth Vader going to be Darth Vader? When you get Darth Vader, you know what he's going to do. He's going to kill people." I mean,
Well, and I think that's why you need that, like, because the question we're asking is why do we need to defend Episode 1? How do you defend Episode 1, even if, like, in my opinion, you don't think it's that? It's like a 2.5-star film for me. But why is it important? Because it has all the content. It's like a badly cooked egg. It's still an egg, and it's still like there's still something in there that can grow into something else. And I think that in the case of this, without that, Clone Wars is astounding. If you haven't, and I adored not the first season so much. Once you get past it, the Revenge of the Sith is astounding. The world is huge now, and a lot of that is given to you in Episode 1. So maybe the way it's given to you, maybe the pacing, maybe Jar Jar, maybe Jay Floyd, whatever it is you're going to complain about, but it does give you like a cornucopia to work with.
If you like Star Wars and you think you don't like the prequels, and if you watch the Clone Wars, I guarantee you will change your mind. Because they expand so much on the stuff they just couldn't put into like 3 movies.
One thing I wanted to ask, didn't you think if George either didn't direct it or didn't write it, it would have improved things?
I think that George Lucas falls from being surrounded by people who probably don't tell him things are bad ideas. He's
Yeah.
probably surrounded by a bunch of yes men. I will say that. And luckily, luckily he didn't make all 3 of them at once, like Lord of the Rings. You know, he kind of paced himself and said, okay, let's get rid of Jar Jar. You know, imagine if he made them all at once. So.
I think he's the world's luckiest writer-creator on the planet. I mean, the man doesn't have to have an editor. He just does what he wants with his own money, and that's it. And, you know, I write. I am perfectly happy when an editor goes, that's perfect. And if it falls or fails, I don't care. I got to put out what I wanted to put out. If you appreciate it as an audience, awesome. If you don't appreciate it, I respect that.
Yeah. It just.
I had some inside info on just what was going on, like in the you know, and there was one guy that he respected in the group that was actually.
I would say Rick McCallum.
Yeah.
What's he doing now?
I don't know. I mean, yeah.
I thought you were going to say
But-
Francis
but-
Ford Coppola.
Was it really Rick? Was he the guy?
Yeah, and it was like
He kept him around.
he told, at least I heard, he told Lucas a lot of the things that are pretty obvious now, like very early on. And so he does have yes men, but when you're paying for everything, I think he was, you know, I think at the end of the day, George has final say on everything. So, but yeah, I think the films would have been much better if at least he would have had a real, you know, co-writer.
I know he wanted Spielberg, so Spielberg wanted. He's like, dude, please let me direct, please, you know.
Yeah, I don't know if he was. I don't know if he was.
Have you ever seen the, what are they, the story sessions he did, like for Empire Strikes Back or Raiders of the Lost Ark with George Lucas? They're really fascinating because you can see George has tons of great ideas.
Yeah, George is
He's the guy saying, you know, Indiana Jones should run from a boulder. He should have a hat.
He comes up with most of the good ideas.
He comes up with all the good ideas. Yeah. It's just he needs somebody to kind of, you know, he needs Lawrence Kasdan to come in there.
And I think also, you know, he took a break from filmmaking, you know, for what, like 25 years or whatever. And it's like, you can't, it's hard to recover from that. Like, go from not making a film in 20 years to going to making, you know, a $250 million movie or whatever it's cost. You know?
There's another theory out there that, like, when the directors have kids, they change. And I don't know if when he had kids in that spectrum, did he have them before?
Were they about to say?
Yeah.
Probably the Ewoks. That's where the Ewoks came from.
I think he'd already adopted some kids, I think. I don't know.
Okay, yeah, go right there.